We have a problem.
Penetrating the United States.
I thought it was safe.
Your future has arrived.
So,
Here we
what do you
are.
think this crazy world we're living in?
Is there a crazy world? What's going at the crazy world is going to be when, I would put some money on the fact that we're going to see Trump in a face mask within the next, I would say, probably week or so, 10 days maybe.
Yeah, in a face mask, and may not see him in the Oval Office.
He's coming around saying, there's nothing wrong with whatever he said today. I don't know if you heard that, but he said something along the lines of, I'm all for it. Oh yeah, face masks, I'm all for it, is what he said.
Ah, okay.
Which is a little bit different from what he has said so far. But where are you on the face masks these days?
Well, I sent you a wonderful, very scientific, in-depth article that you dismissed.
I didn't dismiss it. I just, just like last, I get so tired of people just talking this up in a political way when it has nothing to do with.
No, this was not meant to be political at all.
That article was good.
Yeah, it was by the Center for Infectious Disease, and it was talking about the science and the size of the virus particles and the effectiveness of various types of masks. And I found it very educational because the N95 masks definitely are very effective. The cloth masks are basically useless. The surgical masks are, respirators are like the only sure thing. So I thought it was very enlightening, and where I'm at on masks, you'll be proud of me. I've actually worn a mask a few times. I don't like it. Most of the healthcare workers and the people I talk to can't stand it. And, I don't think anybody necessarily likes it.
Right. It's the same as wearing a seatbelt in the car. I don't like that either. Yeah.
But, I think it really all comes down to, and I confess, I'm a rebel at heart. I'm always, not always, but I tend to, when somebody tells me to do something, my first instinct is to not do it. Okay. And that's the way I've always been.
That's actually the same with me. That's a very Dutch thing, actually. Dutch hate to be told what to do. Yeah.
And so, I've been very cynical all along about, I just feel like the information has changed. The politics in it all have, clouded everyone's judgment and information.
Not everyone's.
Well,
don't say everyone's.
Okay, I'm not
about, but a good amount of people across the spectrum. I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. The media has just infuriates me. All sides. I don't think there's anything such as real news anymore. I agree with Donald Trump that just about everything's fake news because it's all ginned up for the purpose of ratings. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. They're entertainment companies. They're not news companies anymore. And so all I want is the truth and the facts and common sense and not dismissing the seriousness of this, but not overplaying the seriousness of it. How do we find that common ground? How do we, the same things that I've talked about from day one is while you have the virus and the direct effects of the virus, you also have so many other side effects of whether it's emotionally, psychologically, economically, and all of that to me, it's a whole situation. It's not virus versus this or this versus the virus. It's like, how do we look at all of this, taking the data and make reasonable common sense decisions? And I don't feel like that kind of discussion is happening. It's just soundbite, do it. I said, do it. No, I'm not going to do it. And now we have the political, implications of people that wear masks are liberals and people that don't wear masks are conservatives. I mean, it's just insanity,
It is. And I don't have the answer there either, other than that the atmosphere in which we can have this debate over whether or not we should wear masks, and that it has become like a political thing of, like you said, you're either a liberal when you wear a mask and you're a conservative if you don't wear a mask.
Right.
That has been created from the top. There's no question about it. If I monitor European developments, and then again I watch the Dutch news in particular, I suppose, there's also people that say, all of this nonsense with the masks and whatever,
Yeah.
but they're not driven by a political, a political motive. They are.
Well, do you say that because he's chosen not to warn one and Pence hasn't worn one? Is that why?
I think that the fact that Trump has dismissed the importance of the face mask and Pence as well. So in other words, I suppose the Republican side has started to dismiss that a little bit.
Well, but you do realize that at the outset of this, most of I shouldn't say most of the experts, but much of the information we were getting at the time was you don't need a mask. Mask is not going to save you from this. Okay, it's not going to save the other person necessarily, because it really comes down to the information that we were just talking about a minute ago, the effectiveness, the scientific effectiveness of a mask. What type of mask are you wearing? Yes, if you have the N95, then great. Can you get an N95 mask? So I see all these, I'm sorry, I shouldn't call them knuckleheads, but I see all these knuckleheads running around grocery stores with these homemade cloth masks. And I'm going,
that's me.
Why is that? What is that doing in this situation? Other than making a statement, because it's not effective.
Not a statement. It keeps from, if I cough, my spit is not going to go all over the place.
Yeah, but the particles do.
And a percentage of the particles will be filtered out, and it is my estimation that is going to be enough percentage to keep me from getting anything. But the truth of the matter is, I'm also influenced by what I'm hearing and seeing happening in the Netherlands in particular,
yeah,
where they also don't mandate the face masks, because there they say you need to obey the social distancing of 6 feet.
Right.
And if you do that, a face mask is not going to do anything. You need a face mask if you are, for example, in public transportation, which is a big thing of getting around there, right? Trains and buses and all of that. But when you do wear a face mask, you're not allowed to wear a medical mask. You have to wear one of those masks that don't work. Otherwise, you're breaking the law.
Right. Gotcha.
Now that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense either, because if you're mandated to wear a mask that doesn't work, why would you wear one at all?
Right.
The reasoning behind that is simple, which is, okay, so we're not sure if it does anything, but it can't harm or hurt anything either. So let's do it.
Yeah, that's where Angie falls.
Yep.
Angie feels the same way. She's like, you can't tell me, Hunter, that layer, whether it's a T-shirt,
right,
or
right,
it's like, why do you cover your mouth when you sneeze? It's the same.
That's exactly it.
Are we going to stop doing that because we're telling people that these cloth face masks don't work?
Right.
I get it. And she falls on that side where I think we both agree is social distancing, but not. I'll come back to that one. Social distancing and washing your hands and good hygiene.
Yep.
Those two things are the most important, in my opinion. Social distancing to me is not quarantining the healthy. Okay. Staying 6 feet apart. Heck, I don't like to be closer to people than that anyway. So, keep your distance, be smart. But when it comes to quarantining the healthy and mandating, and nobody's mandated. That's the thing too, is, it's become political and it's become this argument on wearing masks or not. Again, they're guidelines, and it's not required over here. So,
it's required over here. Where at the same time, I think that if you were to take that to court, you would probably win, right? Because there's that, and that is a debate that also goes on everywhere, including in, like I said, in the Netherlands that I am following more closely. But I know other countries as well, that there is a good amount of people that consider this type of stuff in violation of the Constitution.
Right.
Constitutional right. Yeah. And, there's something to say for it. But at the same time, when I think about it, and that's when I get into that mood, when I get really tired of all the BS, is, that you just need to do what makes common sense. It doesn't matter if it's in violation of your rights. The point is that it's also not only about you, whether you may get sick or not when you wear a face mask. It's about courtesy and showing respect to others around you, that you recognize that they may have a concern that they could get sick, and that is one of the. That is probably right. That is probably more than 50%. No, not probably. It is more than 50% of the reason that I wear a face mask.
Yeah.
Is to show to others that I respect their concern.
That's good. Yeah. And we need more of that, because.
So wear the damn mask, Hunter.
Well, like I said, I have a few times. I'm not going to wear it all the time, but you know what? I don't go out that much. I really don't.
Well, so I mean, Carla and I will go to the grocery store a couple of times a week. We don't buy bulk, so we go and we like to do fresh. But then only one of us goes into the grocery store, and typically it's me. And then I have a mask and I have gloves. Mm-hmm. I scan with my phone. Our grocery store has one of those remote scanning, that you can scan as you're picking up your groceries. And I have the contactless pay option when I get to the cash register, so I don't have to touch anything or whatever. So I find that important.
Sure.
And then I don't see anybody in the grocery store without a mask. I don't know how that's down there, but
no, it's definitely different down here.
Yeah, Keith all the time is complaining about that too. That he sees people with her, because Keith is like us in that sense. He is concerned, but he is complaining about that all the time. That people are going around without a mask. I was just this morning at the gas station getting gas for the car. People are putting on their mask when they get out of the car in open air to fill up their car with gas, which from getting gas how far apart you are, right?
See, that's where I completely disagree and draw the line.
But the wind blows pretty hard. So
but what about Holland and their 6 feet of distance?
But the wind blows those aerosols pretty far easily. If I cough or sneeze or whatever, it would blow in their direction. But anyway, even I found that a little bit too much to be wearing a mask. I did it when I saw that everybody else was doing it, but I didn't think it was necessary.
I'm going to say something that you'll skewer me over, and I wouldn't say it if I didn't know you were going. If I didn't think you were going to, but if God wanted us to have a mask, we would have been created with a thing over our face, because viruses have been with us from the beginning of time.
Yeah, that's the same thing when I see good-looking women on the beach in a bikini. I'm thinking, if God wanted them to have a top, why don't you take that top off?
Hey, if God wanted them to have a top. Yeah, that's a good point. That's
right?
A really good point. Yeah.
So,
but you know what? When we were in Spain, I'm glad we don't have many listeners, because Angie would kill me over this, but we were in Spain last year. Angie went topless on the beach. And you know what? I didn't see men gawking at her. And other women are walking around on the beach, and I was probably more inclined to gawk at them because I'm American.
Right.
But it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a big deal.
Right. Well, but that's how it should be. That's all I'm saying, because I'm picking that example specifically for that reason. I know that Americans are more into that sort of thing, but that's why I picked that example, because that's how it should be for face masks. You don't think anything about, just like the car seat. Not the car seat, the seat belt. You don't think anything about putting on your seatbelt. It has nothing to do with being afraid. It has nothing to do with thinking, oh, I'm going to get a head-on collision on my way to work. You just put it on because it makes sense.
Because wait though, does it make sense, or is it what we've been taught and what the norm has become?
Well, you were going to say it's the law, which is a whole other problem.
No. Wearing a bikini,
No, not the bikini. Well, the bikini is also no. I was talking about the seatbelt. That's actually infringing on my privacy while I'm sitting in my own car. That the government prescribes me that I need to wear a seatbelt. Don't you think that is an infringement on my privacy?
I do, and I've never agreed with it. I do it because I want to, but that's different because you and Keith, rightly so, the day that we were on the podcast and I said, I don't wear a mask because I'm not afraid to get sick. You said, well, it's not about you. It's about other people.
Right.
The seatbelt is about you. It's not about other people. You getting in a wreck.
I think Angie might disagree, but go ahead.
No, well, okay.
No.
I agree. And I do choose to wear it because I love my wife and I love my family and I want to live. Okay.
Right.
But do you remember Tim Fink from CSAC? Big guy who ran our creative department?
Tim Fink, no.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, he refused to wear a seatbelt. He also bought a Harley and he refused to wear a helmet. I'm like, you know what? Go for it, big guy. You know, I don't agree that if I get pulled over and I'm not wearing my seatbelt, that I should be fined for that. I really don't. I think that's a dumb law. I choose to do it because it's been shown it's going to help protect my life, right? And I wear my seatbelt every time. But
yeah, I don't know. I'm a good driver. I don't need a seatbelt. Never needed it. It's never been engaged.
Well, then you shouldn't have to wear it.
Right. That's the same with child seats. I don't need to put my grandkids in a child seat because I grew up to be healthy. I grew up to be perfectly healthy without a child seat.
No, now I did too. Did you ever sleep in the back window of the car?
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Yeah. On vacation? Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but now you're putting your child in danger. It's another life.
But I never had a problem sitting in the seat without a child seat. Actually, I hit my head one time when my mom, I don't remember what it was that she did. She did something and she hit the fence that was around our property in a way that made me hit my head against the window. Okay,
but there are some factors that you have to put into that equation.
Maybe that explains a lot now that I think about it. I hit my head.
I missed my opportunity. I should have said that. No, but okay. But to your point, there are things that you have to factor into all that. There were fewer drivers back then. Cars were way sturdier than they are now. Okay, people back then. Not to say that people didn't.
Cars were sturdier back then? I don't think so.
Yeah.
The cage that is around you in a modern car is much, much safer than in older cars.
Because of the airbags and all of that stuff.
Not only the airbags, but also the steel cage. Like in a head-on collision, the window hardly ever breaks anymore when you have a head-on collision in those test setups that you have.
Yeah, but the cars back then were solid. They weren't made of plastic like they are now. So these are my parts of my theory anyway. Sturdier cars, fewer drivers, less crazy drivers. Okay. Now, granted, there's always been the propensity and the ability for people to drive drunk, but in 2020, we have some crazy ass people on the road, and it's not just drunks. They're high. But sure. Take those out of the picture. It's the guy who thinks that he's way more important than everybody else, and he's driving 120 miles an hour down the road, weaving in and out of traffic, doesn't care who gets in his way. He is more important than anybody else. And there are many, many, many. When I drive into Nashville now, I'm scared to death. I pull over, and I used to not be this way. But now I pull into the right lane. Fortunately, I don't have many places to go anymore, so I can take my time. But I pull into the right lane. I drive 65 miles an hour. And
really?
All of these idiots fly past me and weave in and out, and I just go, man, you got a death wish. I hope you make it.
Yep.
But you didn't have that back when I was growing up.
Maybe because you were one of those, and you well, I mean, the truth of the matter is that I actually was like that when I was younger, in my 20s. I remember that when I just started working, and I would drive from my parents' house to Bumastemra, where I worked. It was about a 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
I would be that one weaving in and out of traffic, and cutting across a car to go into the exit lane and all of that type of stuff. And I stopped doing that at some point. I don't remember why, but I opened my eyes to the danger of it, particularly for other people, that I would scare doing that, essentially.
Yeah.
But you do stupid stuff when you're young. That is one thing, that's for sure.
Sure.
So, but, back to this whole health thing, I just regret the fact that we were pushed into this idea that it was important to go back to normal. That's a whole other thing that I have a problem with. That in Americans are talking about when can we go back to normal. Mm-hmm. If I follow the discussions and the news and whatever in the Netherlands, they're not talking about going back to normal.
Yeah. I had, by the way, to your point there, I had a conference call with Pedro at BMAT today.
With who?
Pedro.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing great. Said to tell you hello. I told him we started a podcast. He said, send me the link. And I said, no way. You'll want to join Hans.
You're going to damage my image, man, if you keep sending these links around.
The people I'm sending it to, it's not damaging you. It's damaging me. they all agree with you.
Wow.
So, but anyway, he was saying that. He was saying that we have not gone back to normal. I've got the finger quotes. He said we're doing really well in Spain. We got clobbered, at the beginning, but now we're doing really well. So the idea that we can go back to, it goes a little bit hand in hand with this idea that I'm sorry, but that Trump is saying, make America great again, meaning something has happened that made us get off the rails, and we need to restore what we think is greatness. That idea is here at play as well, because we cannot go back to normal. Because if you go back to normal, you're getting situations like what we're dealing with now in Florida or in Arizona or even in Tennessee a little bit, right? If I monitor the statistics for the infection rates in Tennessee, it's going up as well, over 5% at the moment. But I'm going to bring up deaths. You never want to talk about deaths.
No, that's fine.
But the deaths have remained fairly stagnant.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the only explanation I have for that, I suppose, is that the hospitals have gotten to be a little bit more used to dealing with these things that in the beginning were completely flabbergasting, like what's happening, right? People had failing kidneys, they had oxygen levels that were at 15%, while at the same time on their cell phone talking to their family. You heard all these stories that people just didn't understand what the heck was going on.
But didn't it also have to do with more people getting tested?
More people getting tested. Some people get this hydroxychloroquine given. Some people remdesivir. Other people, blood thinners. Whatever the treating doctors or the hospitals think may help is being done at the moment. And I think that's also different from before.
Yeah. Pitt said the other day in his press conference that a lot, he had his team up there and they were throwing out numbers.
Who was this?
But Mike Pence was saying in the press conference the other day that a lot of those that are being tested are the millennials. They're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to, be proactive about this. And that it was a staggering percentage of the people that are testing positive are younger, and big reason why you're seeing the cases go up, but yet they're not being affected by it. Most of them are asymptomatic, and they're not being affected by it, but that they still carry it for sure and can affect other people. But it's interesting that the deaths have really I mean, at one point, didn't we have, well, it was a staggering number per day, how many thousands of people were dying. And then over the last 3 weeks, it's only been like, 600.
Per day.
Huh? No.
Yeah. No, you're confused, because I just sat back and realized to myself that all these people that are downplaying this problem don't realize that every 4 to 5 days we have a number of deaths similar to 9/11, because we have.
Well, yeah, and that's terrible. I'm not downplaying or undermining the deaths.
We have 500 to 600 people dying every day of COVID-19 in this country.
Again, I'm not dismissing or downplaying those. Those are loved ones of other people.
Right, but it's obviously less than we had in the beginning. If that was your point, then you're right.
Point.
Right.
My point. And statistically, when the last numbers I looked at, we were over 10 million globally. 2 million in the U.S. cases.
2.5 million. So that is the other staggering thing in my view, is that 1 in 4 cases is in the U.S. And so is the number of deaths. 1 in 4 of all deaths in the world of corona is in the U.S.
And we're at 125,000.
Right, and the total worldwide is 500, a little over 500,000. So it's 1 in 4. Yeah. Yet 1 in 20 people in the world are American. So we are doing something extremely bad. The fact that we can have 1 in 4 cases and 1 in 4 deaths worldwide, yet 1 in 20 people are American, means that we have a 5 times higher rate of this situation going on than the rest of the world. That's a problem. That includes India, that includes, Europe as a whole. You can compare Europe, for that matter, to the US also over time, and you see this. I'm sure you have seen this graph where you see the numbers go down and to an infection rate of about 1% right now in Europe, whereas in the US at the moment, I think nationwide it's like 12% or something, the infection rate. That's horrendous.
So we have, out of the cases, 2.5 million cases, we have a 5% death rate on average. Right?
Yes. And that is
2.5 million cases globally is. I'm not trying to make any point here. I'm just doing. I like to analyze stuff different ways. 2.5 million out of 350 million. So that's 60% of 60% of 1%, right? Wait, is that right?
In the US?
US 3. No, the world, out of the world, 6%.
Out of the world, we have 10.7 million cases with a total population of, 7 billion, right?
Yeah.
So what are you saying? You want to relate the percentage of cases in the world? So that's 10 million over 7 billion. Yeah, that's 0.14%.
Yes.
Right.
And America, we have 125,000 divided by. No, that's deaths. Sorry, 25,000 equals.
What are you doing?
I'm not telling you because I don't want you to beat me to it.
Oh, okay. I was still looking at the cases, which in the US is about 6 times higher than it is in the world. Based
yeah. So yeah, you're right. So it's 0.14 globally, including the US, and so if you take the US out of that, it's lower, and then it's 0.7 in the US.
Oh, 0.8 is what I came up with because I divided it by 331 million because that's the population number that is mentioned there on the right.
Yeah, I was rounding up to 350, so 331. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got 0.76.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So anyway,
that's a great point.
So that is a discrepancy, and then if you look at the not discrepancy, but that is something that makes the US stand out. Now, what you were saying earlier in terms of deaths, the deaths, what I've been looking at always is deaths per 1 million, right? That is, and there I've always thought that it was interesting that the US and the Netherlands have comparable numbers here. Actually, they're right there on number 9 and number 10 in number of deaths per 1 million.
Yeah, but your total cases, I guess it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, total cases doesn't really matter.
350 to 357 to 395. Interesting.
The death rate of the Netherlands, which I find it interesting how that can be so close together, but that's and then apparently the Netherlands doesn't really register recovered. We don't monitor that. Once your life is not in danger anymore, we send you on your way. See you later. But the recovered numbers are also relevant to me, because that is also interesting in terms of the percentage of recovered,
Sure.
which is fairly low in the US.
Wait, why do you say that?
Huh?
Why do you say that?
In comparison to some other countries, I've done that one time by copy pasting these numbers into an Excel sheet and creating a recovered percentage based on the number of cases. And then the US came out low. I have to admit, I don't know if that's still the case. But the tests, let's look at the tests. That is always a relevant thing to look at. We have the tests per 1 million in the population, right? I don't know if you've ever looked at that recently, but Monaco, Gibraltar, all small countries. So let's forget the small countries. The biggest, the first somewhat larger country that comes up is the United Arab Emirates, that has a fairly high test rate per 1 million people.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to go far down beyond Denmark and the UK and Russia, all the way down here, past Portugal and Spain, before you get to the USA, which currently takes spot 27 in the number of tests per 1 million people. So when...
Where's the test per million? I don't see that.
Oh, on the right here, covered by this little window here. Tests per 1 million. So the total tests performed are here. And then the total tests divided by the population gives you a number per 1 million. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And in that ranking, the USA currently sits on spot 27, which is already better than a couple of weeks ago when they were like number 40. This was when Trump kept saying that we were doing the most tests of anybody in the world, which has never been true. It's still not true. Of course, we're doing a lot of tests because we are a lot of people. 330 million people. But you can't say because you're doing 34 million tests that you're the best in testing of anybody in the world, because you're doing a lousy number based on the total number of people in your country.
What? Okay, but how does that compare? Hang on, though. He may not be inaccurate.
Russia is doing a better job at testing than the USA is.
Wait. Sort it. Total tests. I know you don't care about that, but I want to see that.
Right. Total tests. USA is number 1.
Okay.
Oh no. Actually, number 2 after China.
All right. Well, so he wasn't wrong that we're doing more tests, except for China.
He was claiming that we were doing more tests than all countries combined, which is also not true, as you can see. That has never been true either.
All countries combined?
Right. For a while, he was saying that the USA was testing more than all countries combined. Right. Which was not true. But that's okay. But the point that I'm making is, it's also, you understand why that is not really, relevant, right? I mean, the number of tests is not.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
Just like it's not relevant in saying how big your COVID problem is. You have to look at the infection rate and all of that.
So what are the Chinese per million?
The Chinese per million is 62,000. So that's also still relatively low. China is relatively low. 62,000. That puts them below the US, somewhere around here. 62,000. China, right here, spot 45, between Switzerland and Norway, actually.
Okay. And where is Russia?
Russia is high. Russia is here at spot number 17 between the UK and Singapore.
Okay.
So Russia has actually done a pretty good job. I don't know how reliable these numbers are, just like we question the numbers from China, obviously. But
it does seem that you also have to factor in that the bigger population, the countries with the bigger population.
Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of dismiss these small countries like Malta and Iceland and the Faroe Islands and whatever.
Where's India?
So India is also India is on number 139 when it comes to testing. So they basically are not testing, which is a whole other problem.
Yeah. So you do have to factor in that there is a argument to be made that the more people you have, the harder it is to deploy those tests.
Infrastructure for testing, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. But the point remains also that the USA has had this botched situation with the failed CDC tests, right? So we lost some valuable time while this virus was going around, obviously, and then we missed another opportunity when we refused to keep our foot on the brakes and bring that reproduction number down. Because if we had been able to do that, like we did in most countries in Europe, then we would have been able to reopen, because that's what's happening in Europe right now. I talked to my siblings. They're having a good time over there because the infection rate is so low that they don't really have to worry about anything as long as they stay away from each other. Fantastic.
Okay, but let's assume that we and I know this is not the trend. Even Texas is now going back to the old or I say old, what the closures and everything. But let's assume for a minute that we stayed open and the cases, the infection and cases of infection continue to go up.
Right.
But the deaths stayed stagnant. What would be the harm in that?
The fact that we don't know how it impacts one person from the next, right? I don't know. So you, even if you end up in the ICU and you end up on a ventilator, the damage that it can do to your system, that takes some serious recovery, is something that we don't want for a number of reasons, right? If you're the breadwinner in the family,
no, we don't want that.
You cannot go back to work and you're 6 months out of commission because you have to, do what do you call it? Rehab.
But we don't have any
those things we don't want. We shouldn't.
Well, sure, but we don't have any stats on the variance between death or what's the extremity between death and I'm tested positive and I'm fine. We don't know what the what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, we know a percentage, I suppose, right? And you know also that if the percentages go up of infection, that, like for example in Florida, I'm showing you that here from the Johns Hopkins website.
Mm-hmm.
That if you see this graph and the line goes up in somewhat of an exponential way, then you know you have a problem, because exponential is what you definitely do not want, right? Because exponential means all of a sudden you have an explosion of cases within a week of people walking into hospitals, ICU overloads and all of that stuff, which is now happening in Texas actually, where they're trimming down on the regular care, right? And that is the one thing that you don't want. Sure, you don't care if people get sick, but you don't want them to get sick all in a short order, because that's a load on the health system that we can't handle.
I'm not following the graph that I'm looking at right now.
Oh, okay. So let me pull up Texas for you. Well, Texas is not a good example. So let me go.
Why is it not a good example?
Well, because it's kind of a low, the bar here. So here's what this is. The light color that you see back here is the number of tests that is being performed. The reason that I started to look for this graph was that I agreed with Trump, who was saying, you can't say anything about the number of cases, because if your tests are going up then you'll
Right.
find more cases.
Of course. Yep.
So what I was looking for, and John Hopkins had that information, was of 100 tests performed, how many of those are positive?
Right.
That's what that blue line is. So
Okay.
the blue line shows that in Texas, the positive rate of tests is anywhere between, what is that, like 10 and 20%, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning of this thing in March, it has not been under 10%.
Right.
This is really a bad state when it comes to COVID, to be honest with you. If we're going to look at Tennessee,
Wait, since the beginning of this thing, it hasn't been under 10%. Yes, it was.
in Texas now,
Yeah, go back.
this is 20% infection right here. So half of that is 10. So if I go over that graph, the positives are showing 10.9, 10.7. Oh yeah, 7. Okay, it's 7. It's still pretty high, 7.6, etc., etc. That is what that number indicates, right?
That's positive tests, though.
Right. That is 5% positive rate.
Okay.
Now let's look at the same graph for Tennessee. This is Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So Tennessee, first of all, you can tell that the infection rate is much lower than in Texas. It's pretty low. 5. You know, it's been higher, but since the end of April, it's been going down. Except you can tell that it's also trending up again.
Yeah.
And right now it's you know, close to 10%. 8.2. What is that? 8.2.
8.2.
Right.
Okay.
So trending up is bad. Trending up means I'm not coming to see my grandkids, which I find sad.
Well, but hang on. Let's not go there yet.
I want to show New York or Connecticut, whichever you want.
I don't care.
Let's look at Connecticut. Smaller state. This is Connecticut. This is what it should look like. This is also what the European graph looks like. If you, I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen that graph where it shows the U.S. and Europe basically overlaying each other?
Wait, click on the percentages down there, like you did before. Okay. Keep going.
1%.
To the left. Keep going to the left. I just want to see.
So Connecticut has been pretty bad also, obviously. 21%. You know, here it's been over 40% in April.
Yeah.
Now I'll pull up New York just because you're asking. And even if you're not asking, I'll pull it up. This is New York. The infection rate there as well is around 1%, which coincidentally is the same in the Netherlands at the moment. It's 1% infection rate of all. So in other words, 1 in 100 tests performed comes back positive. But the point is that the graph has been consistently going down. The infection rate has been consistently going down.
How many tests were performed?
So that's this orange in the background.
Okay, so 52,000 new tests.
Right.
Okay, go back to Tennessee.
This is going to be all clipped out of the podcast because it's going to be boring to listen to. Because the podcast cannot see what's happening. But so in Tennessee, you know, on average, I would say probably about 10K, right? 10,000 tests per day on average.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of those 10, and what I agree with you on is that it would be interesting if we also would have some sort of a age breakdown here.
Yeah.
You know, given the fact that we think that we know that older people are more susceptible to more serious symptoms than younger people, right? And also the spreading seems to be more among older people than younger people. But that's a lot of detail that apparently is not available here, or at least not in this graph. I'm sure it's available, but not here. Oh, here's Carla who wants to know how much longer we're going to be talking about COVID cases. All right. 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Are we going to talk about this another 15 minutes? What do you think?
Yeah, we'll be done before then. Yeah.
Carla started cooking before I knew that we were meeting an hour later. Then, so
Well,
it's
how long we been going?
an hour.
Oh, then yeah, let's wrap it up, man.
But I find this so, so this is what I'm looking at, and I'm not listening to anybody saying anything. I'm just looking at these numbers. And if I see a trend going up a little bit, even like in this Tennessee case where you see this dip, there's probably an explanation for that, but who cares? Let's not talk about that. I'm looking at the whole time from May all the way through the end of June. I see this number slowly but steadily going up. And I'm thinking to myself, people, don't go to a restaurant, stay home, because we know that those types of circumstances will make that graph go up. And if we do that for a couple of weeks, we were on our way until May 10th to bring it down to something around 1%. Because I think that what they think right now is if this infection rate can be held around 1%, then we can give ourselves freedoms that we don't have to worry about too many things. 1% means that 1 in 100 people that you engage with has the virus.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the next few months, how they unfold, particularly in other countries.
But the infection, yeah, and the other thing but I can talk about this forever, because the other thing that I find so fascinating is that, and the first time that occurred was in Holland, when there was a big demonstration with where they thought they gave permission for 500 people to congregate, and it ended up being 5,000 people. They were too close together on the square in Amsterdam. And they were, oh my God, freaking out now, we're going to have an explosion in COVID, and it didn't happen. Just like all these Black Lives Matter protests everywhere have not led to a rise in infections.
How do you know?
Well, because you can bring up New York and you can see that it hasn't turned out to be the other way around. Or I can bring up Minneapolis. There's no spike in this line when after Memorial Day, I think it was, right? May 25th or thereabouts, these protests began. Yeah,
but I mean, protests have been everywhere. So
well, yeah. So
we've had lots of protests in Tennessee.
Right, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, Tennessee is also a little bit of an increase, but not a whole lot. Nothing compared to Florida or Texas or Arizona or California, even for that matter. But that's the same thing that they're seeing in Europe, where these demonstrations are also happening.
Yeah.
Which makes scientists say more and more that the issue is not so much outside, that you can infect people outside, but the issue is with inside ventilation systems and all of that, which stale air and the virus keeps hanging around. So don't go into a bar, don't go into a restaurant, because that causes problems. I don't know.
It's good info, Hans.
Anyway,
I like it. I like data and I like numbers, and this is good stuff.
Yeah, this was a pretty insightful graph that I found, but the problem is that we cannot use that in the podcast because nobody can see it unless I use the video. Well, but let's wrap it up so I can eat with Carla.
Yeah, I'll dig into this and I'll figure out a way to distort the facts like I used to do with CSAC to like increase our license fees or.
Yeah. It's interesting stuff.
That's really good. Thank you. I'll take a look at it. Yeah. Have a nice dinner.
Thank you. It's something that she cooked up that has been in the oven, and I don't want it to get cold. Obviously, it was a new thing she tried in her quest to lose some weight. So we'll see if I like it. If I don't, then I'll go to McDonald's.
You go get a cheeseburger. All right. Well, man,
all right, buddy.
I've missed this. It's been too long. Let's. We're playing again this weekend, and it's 4th of July weekend, but maybe Wednesday. So maybe we'll just do another week or so. But let's don't let it be 3 weeks again.
Right.
All right.
I apologize for being a little bit snarky last week.
Are you recording this?
I am.
Testing. Are we getting this on tape here?
That I'm apologizing? All right, big guy.
It's all good. I know you love me.
I love you.
Love you too.
Talk to you soon.
Have a great night. Send my love to Carla.
Will do.
All right. See you, buddy.
I thought it was safe.
Your future has arrived.